The avowed goal of many contemplative traditions in Buddhism is enlightenment. Almost all of these traditions have different views on what the realization of the true self or the true nature of reality is. They also have different names for it and different takes on how to get there. Yet there is one question that practitioners of all traditions contend with. Is enlightenment gradual or sudden like a bolt of lightning? The disagreement between proponents of gradual enlightenment and sudden enlightenment was perhaps the most consequential in early Chinese Chan Buddhism. Chan is Chinese for Zen and derived from the Sanskrit word dhyana, meaning meditation. Traditionally, it is believed to have been brought to China by a Buddhist monk, Bodhidharma, who either came from South India or Iran. From China, where it flourished, Chan spread to Vietnam as Tien, to Korea as Sion, and to Japan as Zen. Wherever it went, the original stock of Indian Buddhism transformed, adapting to local needs and being molded by existing ideologies. In China, Buddhism mixed with native Taoism to create Chan. The great Chan masters whose innovations created modern Zen are regarded its patriarchs. The first patriarch of Zen is Bodhidharma, who some believe comes from an unbroken line of masters extending all the way back to Gautama Buddha himself. According to legend, after coming to China, Bodhidharma lived in a cave where he spent all of his time in a kind of meditation called wall gazing. After 9 years of this, he awakened only to realize that he had been asleep for the last 2 years and not actually meditating. In a fit of rage, he cut off his eyelids, and from them, legend says, the first tree plants sprouted. The meeting between Bodhidharma and the second patriarch, Haik, is also a fantastic story, which is to say, probably embellished like much of early Chan history. After imploring Bodhidharma to take him as a student and being rejected, Haik stood outside Bodhidharma's cave for many days. Finally, to demonstrate his determination, Haik cut off his arms and presented it to Bodhidharma. As Bodhidharma's most illustrious student, Haik eventually inherited his master's begging bowl and robe. From him, it passed through the hands of Jiangji Sangshen and Dai Daojin until it reached Daman Hongren, the third, fourth, and fifth patriarch, respectively. There is very little known about these early masters of Zen, but a poetry contest at the East Mountain Monastery of Daman Hongren would set the stage for the greatest ideological battle in Zen history. An ailing Hongren once convened a meeting of all his students and declared that he was ready to pass on the robe and begging bowl of Bodhidharma. He asked all of his students to write a poem that illustrated their understanding of the true nature of reality. The poem that best captured the essence of enlightenment, he said, would earn its writer the robe and the bowl. All the monks in the monastery decided not to contest. They all agreed that Shen Xiu, the head monk, was the natural successor to Hongren. Shen Xiu, in the meantime, knowing what was expected of him, struggled to compose the poem. Eventually, he wrote a poem on a wall in the monastery that read thus: Our body is the Bodhi tree, and our mind a mirror bright. Carefully we wipe them hour by hour, and let no dust alight. When in the morning Hongren saw the verse, he pretended to be impressed by it. However, that evening, the master summoned the head monk to his private quarters. This verse does not demonstrate that you have yet achieved true understanding of the original nature. Prepare your mind more fully, and when you are ready, submit another poem, Hongren told Shen Xiu. The next morning, there was another poem alongside Shen Xiu's. There is no Bodhi tree, nor stand of a mirror bright. Since all is void, where can dust the light? The man who wrote these lines was Hui Neng. He was a novice at the monastery, having been there only for 8 months, and was not yet ordained. He had spent much of this time doing menial work. The monks who read his poem were impressed, but Master Hongren, being tactful, told them that the person who wrote the poem lacked complete understanding. Later that day, he summoned Hui Neng and gave him Bodhidharma's robe and bowl, anointing him the 6th patriarch of Zen. He asked Hui Neng to flee to southern China and teach Zen to all those who would listen. In the dead of night, Hui Neng, then 24 years old, crossed the Yangtze River and went south where he lived as a vagabond. After almost 2 years in the rural south, Hui Neng gave up traveling and went to Canton. There he became the abbot of the Sao Chi temple, but otherwise lived a life of relative obscurity. This was the golden age of Buddhism in China. The emperor himself was the chief patron of Buddhist establishments. The Chinese government financed the construction of numerous temples and monuments dedicated to Buddhism. In the year 701, the Chinese Empress Wu invited Chen Xiu to the imperial capital. The head monk was now the abbot of the East Mountain Monastery and widely regarded as the successor of Daman Hongren. Empress Wu made Chen Xiu the priest in residence at the imperial palace. As the leader of northern Zen, Chen Xiu preached to enormous crowds and helped make Zen popular in the northern cities. This was also the time when the split between step-by-step enlightenment and all-at-once enlightenment happened. Zen masters in the capital and generally in the north emphasized traditional values of Zen practice, namely meditation and rigorous mental training. Zen masters in the south, like the real patriarch Huineng, emphasized intuitive wisdom. In fact, Huineng did not think that meditation was even necessary for enlightenment. You may recall that Chan is Chinese for meditation. Meditation had been central to Bodhidharma's way of Zen for centuries. According to the Platform Sutra, a text attributed to Huineng, all sentient beings have Buddha nature. Enlightenment is the discovery of this nature, the original mind. Like clouds blocking out the sun, thoughts obscure the original mind. One thought inevitably leads to another, and the cycle of attachment keeps one unenlightened. When the chain is broken, when the mind is in a state of no thought, the person is enlightened instantaneously. The man who would save Huineng and his ideas from obscurity is his student, a man called Shen Hui. His name sounds eerily similar to Shen Xiu, the false sixth patriarch, so in the interest of avoiding confusion, we shall call him Angry Student. The student was indignant that the imperial capitals in the north had exalted Shen Xiu to the rank of a patriarch. After the death of Huineng, the student traveled to a temple near the capital. During an important ceremony, he mounted a platform and declared that a historical deceit had been committed by Shen Xiu and his followers. Shen Xiu was a false patriarch, and the real one was his master Huineng. His tirade was not directed solely at Chen Xiu. He attacked all of Northern Zen, its ideas, and its methods. He continued to do this for more than a decade. The angry student was a persuasive speaker. Crowds that came to listen to him listened intently as he presented an alternative history of Chan. The poetry contest at the East Mountain Monastery, how a commoner beat the designated successor of Daman Hongren to become the sixth patriarch, and how he fled to the countryside to escape the wrath of monks at the monastery. Finally, the chief of imperial censors and a follower of Shen Xiu accused the student of treason and had him exiled to the south. In the following years, there was a period of political instability in China. In 756, a military coup ousted the reigning emperor. He eventually took back the throne with the help of Arab mercenaries, but the damage had been done. The mercenaries looted the capital after their victory, and the lack of taxation during the interregnum made the government penniless. In order to raise funds quickly, the government decided to issue a large number of certificates of priesthood to Buddhist monks. You see, being a monk meant that you didn't have to pay taxes, but before becoming state certified, monks had to pay a one-time compensation. To lead the fundraising campaign, the government needed a persuasive speaker. So Huineng's student was summoned to the capital, and for leading a successful campaign, Shen Hui was rewarded with official recognition of his version of Chan history. The ultimate victory of the southern school of Chan over the northern school meant that the doctrine of sudden enlightenment became more mainstream. What is this all-at-once doctrine? Well, it doesn't mean that enlightenment is easy to attain or that training is useless. Meditation can help prepare the mind for enlightenment, but it isn't necessary for enlightenment according to the Platform Sutra. What is necessary is insight into the true nature of reality. This is illustrated by the famous Zen story about the meeting between a Zen master and his student. As the story goes, one day, the Chan master Hao Zhang came across his student deeply absorbed in meditation. The master asked him why he spent so much time meditating. "I want to become a Buddha, an enlightened being," came the reply. Saying nothing, the master picked up a brick and started rubbing it with a rock. The student, unable to contain his curiosity, asked the master why he was doing this. To this, Hao Zhang replied, "I'm polishing the brick into a mirror." "How can you expect to make a mirror by polishing a brick?" asked the student, surprised. And the master shot back, "How can you expect to be enlightened by meditating?" At this point, I should mention that the authorship of the Platform Sutra is disputed by historians. While it purports to be a sermon given by Huineng, Many suspect that it was actually written by the angry student Shen Hui. Some historians think it's also possible that Chen Hui concocted the whole life story of Huineng, including the midnight poetry competition and succession of patriarchy. But Chen Hui's political victory meant that many later Chan masters would take sudden enlightenment as dogma. They would also devise ways of precipitating enlightenment in their students, like unexpectedly yelling in their students' ears or bonking them on the head. Such shock treatments were expected to jolt them into seeing the true nature of reality.